Hey everybody, it's class 5. We only have 2 left, 5 and 6, and we'll be done with the boot camp. So that's awesome. Thanks for going on this journey with me. So today we're going to talk about the terrain and other supplies you need to keep, to enhance, and in fact, some of it to even do your gaming, well. And so, like terrain, for example, you got to have land to fight over. So let's look at some of the ways that I've done it. And I'll give some other companies that provide supplies for that area of gaming. And then I'm going to talk about some of the really foundational stuff to just get started. And we'll talk about paints and, look at the list and see about storage and some other things. Things to think about as you're going. Some will be more necessary to get going, and some can kind of wait as you get going here. So I think today we're going to do things a little differently. Instead of me just sitting here and talking with my backdrop here, we're going to actually walk around the messy wardrobe room here, and we're going to look at some of the supplies and things that I use and some of the suggestions I have. So let's take a journey around the room here. Let me grab the case here. Oh, what do we have here? Okay, so let's just take a real quick look at this small setup that I got going here. Well, let's talk about the basics of the board and the terrain that you're going to fight on. Now, understand that most miniature games are fought on a 6-foot by 4-foot table. And that's what this basically is showing you. Now, and so this is a 6 deep by 4-foot wide table. I have a board game here and a miniature game. That's Bastogne, by the way, World War II. And then you've got a miniature game going on here. But this is 6 by 4. So that's the basic, if you want to kind of think about what size table you're going to need. Now, hear me here. You start with what you've got. Now, there's a great YouTube channel called Kitchen Wargamers. Guess what? He plays in his kitchen, on his table. He tears it up and down every time he plays. You start with what you have. I built a table out that was 42 inches by 42 inches, but it was a well, and that was when I was playing with 6mm, and so it really fit well. Now, I'll tell you what, it still fits well for 15mm on some games, and then I have been very fortunate to have a room where I can have, actually, I have a 6 by 8 table, and you can see the wood continues on over there. All right, so this right here is a 2 by 2 area. You can kind of see where it's kind of bumped out over here. And this is for some scenarios that I adapted from a website called Steve's Balagan. His site is amazing. He did 6 2x2 scenarios to run at tournaments and to introduce people to the game of Crossfire. I have adapted it for Blitzkrieg Commander and I put it into a PDF, but this is just to test out scenarios, test out rules. Now 2x2 is pretty small for some rules. Now you would probably go much bigger than 15mm on this, but here's the thing. What if you're playing skirmish, remember, just with like 5 to 10 guys, maybe 5 guys, and you have stats for each guy? This may be big enough, especially if you put buildings in here and you had 28mm. You could get away with that. I played Flames of War on here, Blitzkrieg Commander, Crossfire, Bolt Action. I've tried a bunch of little rules on here just to try it out. If all you have is a table or a flat surface or a floor, I even did that when I first started. I would have even got down on the floor, and I used some books and some things to break up line of sight before I had all this terrain and things like that. Use what you have. Don't let things get in your way. Like the ground. They sell some really cool battle mats out there. And so some of those battle mats out there are like Cigar Box, Geek Villain, Tiny War Games, Mats by Mars. These all vary in what they're made of, materials. Some are like mousepad material. Some are a fleece. Some have like a teddy bear fur. Some are straight cloth with printing on it. And there are others out there that exist. I don't happen to own any. So what I have done is I've gone to a place here called Joann Fabrics. It can be any fabric store, and I've bought material. In real life, this is very bright. Well, it's a kind of a dark, but kind of a shiny green, but it tends to look okay on video. But you can see it's kind of just a, I don't know anything about fabric, but it's fabric, but I think it's called a Snuggie, but it kind of looks like grass. Especially at smaller scales, this would really work even well. I got this for maybe, I usually buy enough to fill 6 by 8, and then I cut one up to use for other things, or maybe I use it to cover the whole table. Now what I've done here is I've put a 2 by 2 piece of foam, again, which I'll talk about in a minute, so it kind of raises it up a little bit, but this shows that you can put things under here to make hills, so your hills are more natural and not something that stands out kind of like this hill. So you can buy all kinds of fabrics, and I will show you that in just a minute. Start with felt for wood floors, for water, for even for towns. You know, get gray and green and blue, and then you can add paint to them. There's lots of things you can do. Now let's go into my back room here where I do some of my painting and terrain building. Okay, so let's look at the foam here. So this is standard foam that you would use in construction. So I got this at our local Lowe's. There's Home Depot, and you know, name your place in the country and area where you live. And I bought a couple different thicknesses of it. It's nice and sturdy. A lot of people use this as their base for their table. You can say I got this thickness. It cuts easy with an X-Acto knife, so just take a big old blade, not X-Acto knife, but a utility box knife. And then I've cut it into some different sizes that I need. I showed you the 2x2 area that I've used it for. You can cut these into hills. My very first hills were made of stuff like this. There's also pink foam. It's good to go with this foam because it's very dense. You know, it's building insulation. It's not that white foam. That stuff kind of tends to fall apart because the beads are, you can still see the beads of that foam. So let's go into the room where I do some of my work here. And we're going to look at some of the other mats I use and get my notes over there. So here are the different things I've used. So here's some gray I've used for towns and you know, roads. Some blue for naval games or rivers. Now this is just kind of a felt-like material, but it's just big. I left it big for like desert or just, you know, ground brown. Now this stuff is kind of a light corduroy. I always have a hard time saying that. It can be fields, and I've done that. Maybe even the fields for your, or the floors for your forests. And then here's the teddy bear fur. I got kind of buried here. But that makes nice field steps for Russia, or just kind of, I cut some of it out for fields, and then it looks really cool if it's the whole table. So there's some of that tan stuff cut as fields. There's a whole collection of trees. Now trees you can make yourself with plastic armatures and clump foliage, or you can buy them. You can find them on eBay and Amazon, and Woodland Scenics is a model railroad company. That's one I've used most of the time. Again, I would prefer to buy all my stuff built. They're more expensive. This is a carpet, a welcome mat rug from IKEA, and I cut it up and made it like wheat fields. It works perfect for 15, a little short for 28, but there's other things you can use for that. It works for 28 as well. There's some of this battlefront pre-made stuff here, fields and terrain there. You can make them, but I found a sale on them and got them. Your friend, clump foliage. So they have a variety of clump sizes. I bought several bags and just put them in here, and then I just spread them out on the table a lot. I also make my hedges with them. I just line it up, kind of push it together, and make little hedges. But you can use it for 28 for just like scatter on the table, which just adds it. Because, you know, no table is flat billiard, you know, like a pool hall. There's lichen that you can get at hobby stores, floral department. Kind of scrubber brushes for pots and pans and things. Cut them up. They can be bocage, again, good for 6. And also for 15 for like little hedges. So here's flock. It's kind of almost a sawdust consistency. You can get different, like fine, super fine, more coarse. This works for the models I use. You want more coarse, probably the bigger scales you go. There are companies like Luke's Apps, you know, buy his stuff, and other companies that put out really. So here are my buildings. These that you're happen to be seeing here are Battlefront. So you can buy them pre-painted and done, which is really awesome. Of course, I've said it a million times. I got some plastic craft. I've got some paper buildings for 6 mil. I used like, there's some paper, you can cut them out. They make them for 15 and 28. I've seen them in those scales. They look really good. There's a Sarissa Precision is one I have a lot of. TT Combat, Timecast buildings. Okay, well, you know, the models. That's why we play these games, right? The little miniature guys, miniature soldiers and equipment. Some things you're gonna need to do that. Glue, right? There's super glue, which is really good on metal, gluing things to bases. There's plastic glue, which is good because it actually melts the plastic together. And you can always, you know, use some of this, just traditional white glue. You don't have to get this extreme, it's just something we had. But, you know, you can use this for basing a lot is what I use it for, and for terrain building. Well, you got to put your miniatures on something. So there's a variety of bases. Flames of War comes with bases in many of their sets. Bolt Action is the same, round, different sizes. I can't get in all the other sizes. Go to a site like Litco and you'll just be your mind blown. But you can use all kinds of stuff for you to base on. I've used cardstock. Some people just use straight cardboard, straight from cereal boxes. That's old school, but you can do it. You can use whatever. I've used kind of a thick, kind of a paper board type of material with magnets on the bottom to base them, to put in cases. You can use washers, which is nice because then you don't have to use magnets. Then you can put a magnet base in a case and it sticks to it. I've used smaller washers for individual based. There's always these wood bases from Litco, which I got a bunch of just to try out some different ideas. And I base mine, I base a lot of mine singularly to do some skirmish level games and for casualties and all that. And then I base a lot of mine this way for a variety of reasons I can get into another time. But then you got to do something with that base, right? So you really need to put some, I could do plain wood. Good base can really help a model look awesome. There's static grass, which actually sticks up. This is flock, so it just kind of lays down on the ground, you can see. Static grass will actually stand, and there's applicators you can use so it kind of looks more like grass. And then there's also tufts of grass that you can stick on there, and it looks really... I have saved this back part here for labels. How do you store these things? This is a Plano box that I've used, a Plano fishing box in the US called Plano. There's Rayco, that's very expensive. There's other boxes like it. There's jewelry boxes from some of the fabric stores for like beads and stuff like that. Some other stuff I've used are just regular kind of good storage boxes that are made for storing like archival materials, things like that. There's these plastic bins. You could put magnets on the bottom to store things or just your terrain. Storage is a big deal. These are old Flames of War bags that I traded someone with. I love these bags. They're really awesome. But then I got a lot of my stuff in this, you know, these boxes. So you can build stuff. Mini Warmut, he does a great job of this. He's a channel there. He doesn't really do a lot of World War II gaming, although he's getting started. Well, use stuff that you find or that you use around the house. This actually was plastic from the blister pack. So that came off. It's clear. I spray painted it black, and then I just painted a black line. No, I didn't paint a black line. I left the black line. I painted gray around it. And then I kind of painted some white drop shadows and then, you know, put a door on it and then put some flock and material on in the base. And now it's a bunker. Let's talk about paints. Let's move this glue out of the way. I'm a huge fan of Vallejo. I love Vallejo paints. Vallejo, V-A-L-L-E-J-O. So, you know, this is Vallejo. They have a lot of colors that are made specifically for World War II and other military vehicles. This is Citadel. This is more, you know, for Warhammer stuff, but this is, again, a wash. There's also craft paints. So I buy this big craft paint. You can get this very cheap, Apple Barrel in the US, water it down a little bit, and you can paint your terrain. Then I buy these smaller than that containers of craft paint to even paint some tanks and things like that. And remember, and you can use just that. Just get as close as you can, because it's really tans, greens, browns, and other shades of that. And you don't worry about getting it 100% exact. Unless that really bugs you, then more power to you. Uniforms faded. There's some picture out there, like 50 Shades of Field Grau. There's a great website called that. Look, cloth fades. They didn't have consistent colors. They ran out of colors. Speaking of painting, I'm a paints by number. Battlefront, the makers of Flames of War, put out a book called The Colors of War. If you can get it, get it, get it, get it. If you are very new to it and you're okay painting by numbers, because that's essentially what this is doing. This covers World War II and World War III, and they focus on the Vallejo colors. So if you're not a fan of Vallejo paint for whatever reason, which I get, don't worry about it. You don't have to get this book, but it does give you good examples and good ideas. Just goes through all the basics. What do we mean by shading and layering and doing all this stuff? And you can paint as simple or as complex as you want. They talk about basing, how to shade stuff, how to make it look weathered. I think that's pretty much all we need to cover about terrain and other supplies. That should be enough to kind of get you started. I will put a link to a site called Faux Hammer that kind of had a gift buying guide for 2019. It kind of talks through some of this stuff. Again, you can find some great videos about this. There's a really good series. I'm probably post it next week from someone who plays Bolt Action, who did a really good set talking about how to get started and some of the basic supplies. Really good stuff. So that's it for Class 5. Hey, everybody, we have one class left, and you're ready to go on your own and start World War II miniature wargaming. And we'll get to Class 6, where we're going to talk about some of the resources available to you to help your hobby be better. So we'll see you at the next class. Class 5, I think that's all we need. So now next is Class 6, so I just need to, oh yeah. Hey, to all you, I put Toddy on there to kind of make it fun and silly. and you keep asking for Toddy. Hey, look, I have fired Toddy. All right, there's no more Toddy. It's a 1940s thing, a little silly thing. It was cute, but no more Toddy. You keep asking in the comments and asking me. I'm like, I can't afford him. He's from the 40s. It requires time travel, blah, blah, blah. No more. It's just a wardrobe and playing games and having a good time. Make your own channel about Toddy. Whatever.